In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the current state of American politics, focusing on the perceived incompetence of President Joe Biden and the implications for Vice President Kamala Harris as she positions herself for the upcoming election. Shapiro expresses outrage over the lack of accountability from the Biden administration and the media's complicity in perpetuating a narrative that shields both Biden and Harris from scrutiny. The podcast opens with a stark observation. The world is on the brink of conflict, particularly in the Middle East, yet President Biden appears to be absent from the public discourse. Shapiro highlights the alarming reports of Hezbollah preparing for an assault on Israel and the U.S. mobilizing military resources in the region, all while Biden is depicted as being asleep on a beach in Delaware. This imagery serves to underscore Shapiro's argument that there is a significant leadership vacuum at the highest levels of the U.S. government. Shapiro argues that Biden's mental acuity has been in question since the first presidential debate, where even members of his own party began to express doubts about his capability to serve. The narrative suggests that the Democratic Party has effectively sidelined Biden while keeping him in office to avoid accountability for his administration's failures. Shapiro posits that Kamala Harris is complicit in this charade as she benefits from Biden's presence while avoiding the responsibility of his policies. As the podcast progresses, the focus shifts to Kamala Harris, who is portrayed as a candidate devoid of substance. Shapiro criticizes her for not holding press conferences or answering questions about her positions, suggesting that her campaign is built on a facade of charisma rather than concrete policy proposals. He argues that Harris's strategy is to distance herself from Biden's record while simultaneously benefiting from his incumbency. Shapiro points out that Harris has adopted several of Donald Trump's policies, particularly regarding immigration and economic issues, without acknowledging her previous stances. This inconsistency is framed as a deliberate attempt to appeal to a broader electorate while avoiding accountability for her past actions as Vice President and Attorney General of California. The media's failure to challenge her on these points is highlighted as a significant issue, with Shapiro expressing frustration over the lack of serious journalism in the current political climate. The podcast also critiques the mainstream media for its role in perpetuating the narrative surrounding Biden and Harris. Shapiro describes the media as a Democrat media human centipede, suggesting that they are complicit in the Democratic Party's efforts to shield Harris from scrutiny. He argues that the media's reluctance to ask tough questions allows Harris to maintain her image as a viable candidate while avoiding the consequences of her record. Shapiro emphasizes that the media's failure to hold Harris accountable is particularly egregious given the current geopolitical tensions and domestic challenges facing the country. The podcast suggests that the media's focus on superficial aspects of Harris's campaign, such as her public appearances and social media presence, detracts from the serious issues at hand. As the podcast nears its conclusion, Shapiro discusses the upcoming election and the implications for Donald Trump. Shapiro argues that Trump must capitalize on the vulnerabilities of both Biden and Harris to regain momentum in the race. He emphasizes the importance of defining Harris as a candidate, pointing out that she is not well known enough for voters to have a clear understanding of her positions and record. Shapiro expresses concern that Trump has not been aggressive enough in his campaign strategy, particularly in swing states where Harris is reportedly gaining ground. The podcast suggests that Trump needs to focus on specific policy issues and highlight Harris's inconsistencies to effectively challenge her candidacy. Shapiro believes that the time is running short for Trump to make a significant impact and that he must act decisively to counter Harris's narrative.